Today we're in Chapter 2, and we're going to start the first lesson, which is dealing with economic systems. The essential question we're going to ask is, how does the economic system help a society deal with fundamental problems of scarcity? So the book starts off slow, and the first type of economy that we're going to talk about is a traditional economy. And this is an economic system in which the allocation of scarce resources and other economic activity is the result of ritual, habit, or custom. This is basically when you think about the historic natures of tribes. I think of African cultures, the small little groups, things of that nature. The problem with this type of economy is it's based off of the tradition of what we did, what did our parents do, what did our grandparents do. The good thing about that is we always know what role the person plays in their society or in their economy. But the discouraging part about it is it leads to stagnation, meaning that there's no progress, there's no advancement, and we use the technology and tools that we've used for generations. Now, the example that we're going to talk about in the next couple of days is the Inuit people of Canada and Alaska, mostly in Canada. There's a picture and image here on the right. This is a group of people in northern Canada, and they provide the perfect example of what a traditional economy looks like. For thousands of years, the parents taught their children the survival skills that they needed to survive in the Arctic Circle's severe climate. They taught hunting and fishing and gathering, and then the children would pass those rituals on to their children, so on and so forth. So a traditional economy is the most basic sort of economy that there is, not a lot of outside contact, so it makes it a very easy to describe system. Once again, the first section and the second section that we're going to talk about in the book, we're going to link those two ideas using the Inuit people for more details. The second, and I feel the more important idea, is the whole idea of a command economy. And what a command economy is an economy where the central authority makes the major decisions of what, how, and for whom to produce. They assign each person a role. That person has to then complete that role. And the perfect example is the whole idea of North Korea. North Korea is a sovereign nation. We see it on the news all the time with Kim Jong-un, as the leader of the dictatorship of North Korea. They're known for not being very advanced as a society, but we still have fears about their trying to advance the government through the proliferation of nuclear weapons. But for the main part, in North Korea, you don't really have much of an industry. The people don't have the jobs, and there's an excess of food. An in excess of food. A perfect example of this is if we look from above from a satellite image, you see that the advancement of North Korea is not there. So up to the north, again, there's no lights here, and at the bottom you see South Korea. When you look back to after World War I and World War II, the whole idea was the communist north of Russia had the influence over North Korea, and in the south there was more of an American influence. That's why you see the American way of creating a capitalistic state spread through the south, and the north remained stagnant, not trading with outside sources, not creating much industry, and therefore you see this total difference. Well, the actual difference you see is when you look at the chart and graph of what is South Korea doing versus North Korea. And to look at a command or even a traditional type of culture, you see that most of it's based off of agriculture. There's not nearly as many industry services or services in general. So when you look at North Korea, the amount of agriculture is 23% of their economy or their GDP. Where on the right or left side is South Korea, where you see agriculture just remains a small portion. It sustains what the people need to survive, but they have more focuses which is on service and industry, which creates a big difference between the economies of the two groups, leading South Korea to be a much wealthier nation. When you see a portion of the industry being above 5% with agriculture, typically that means that the society is poor. Not because agriculture is a bad thing, but because if it's that large of a portion of their economy, that means that they're not doing a lot of other things there. So to review from the first chapter, what was GDP? And GDP is the gross domestic product, and that's the total value of all the goods produced and the services provided to a country during a full year. So if we look through North Korea and South Korea again, and you look at their GDP per capita means per person on average, you'll see that there's a gigantic disadvantage to the North Koreans versus the South Koreans. For the average person in South Korea, their GDP per capita is right around $33,000. You can see that North Korea is right around $1,000. So it shows again North Korea is a poor state compared to that of South Korea. There are advantages, of course, to each system. In the Soviet Union or Russia, when the Soviet Union existed, it uses a command system, and it could change drastically or quickly. 1910, the society, Russia's state, was mostly rural and agricultural in nature. World War I comes and happens, and at the beginning of World War I, Russia's fighting with the Allies. At home in Russia, there becomes a revolution, what they call the Bolshevik Revolution. After that, you're going to see it turn into a communist state. When Stalin takes control of the USSR, you see that he has a push of making everything industrialized quickly, meaning that he puts people to work, and you literally have a boom of economic growth, but it was for government services, meaning they were creating bombs, they were creating weapons, they were creating every type of industrial type of information to create a more advanced society, but based off of government need, not off the personal need of people. So the whole idea of socialism. Socialism is an economic and political system in which the government owns some, but not all, the factors of production. As such, the government plays a major role in answering most of the questions like what, how, and for whom. The problem is there ever been true socialism? You know, we look at the United States and we say, well, we have a mixed economy because, you know, before the FDR's New Deal, most of us had a free market economy. We then added in some aspects of socialism like Medicare or Medicaid, Social Security, those types of things that were government issued, meaning that everybody put a little bit of money in the pot so that everybody can enjoy a little bit of it. But in true socialism, you know, you look at, did it ever actually exist? Well, no, because if you look at from socialism and communism, the leaders still had nicer cars, universal, you know, you pay no matter what, you have no choice. Doctors are going to be paid the same as factory workers because they just fit in that role of just kind of a piece of the puzzle in what the society's full need is, based again off of mostly what the government's asking for doing. And what we've seen from studies of socialism that has worked in in our history is there's also a use of propaganda of the government, so they control the airwaves and they control what kind of messages are sent. You still to this day, we know places like China, North Korea, Russia, their state-controlled media shares what kind of information the people are actually going to be able to learn. The next one's going to be a market economy, and that's going to be an economic system in which supply and demand and the price systems help people to allocate resources to make the what, how, and for whom to produce a decision. This is mostly what the United States looks like because we have a market system. We have parts of socialism, but for the most part, we are in a true market capitalistic economy. Well, what does that mean? It means when we have the money to spend things, we spend it. So prior to 2005, an example here is gas prices were low. So we had the money to go and buy gas guzzling vehicles, large vehicles that didn't have really good gas mileage. It was the right thing to do at the time, as people thought. Later on, when gas prices rise, what you see is these cars are all kind of left behind, and now there's a push for electric cars, there's a push for hybrid cars, and these big cars that you used to see on the road all the time are now non-existent. I can't even tell you the last time I've seen a large Hummer on the road any longer, and that company has since went out of business. Disadvantages, of course, are the people, it doesn't provide for everyone, meaning some people are too old or too sick to earn the living and care for themselves. You know, basic goods. Who supplies it? The road, the schools, the libraries. That's where I say the whole idea of, even though in the United States, we have some aspects of socialism based off of what we've done before. We have a system where we all pay in taxes, and that tax money is then brought back to the government, where we provide the roads, where we provide the schools, where we provide those libraries. Competitive businesses leave, job loss is fear, and there's lower salaries. meaning that competitive businesses, they're going to compete. They're going to go to the places where they're the cheapest taxes, and they're going to make sure that they have the best workforce, which leaves those other people who are behind, the people who are too old, too sick to earn that living. So my question to you again, in the richest country in the history of the world, which is the United States, how do we still have homeless people? And that's just a question to think about and ponder as we go on through the discussion into our next section.